If you're broke, tired, and want to escape the rat race, starting a remote cleaning business in 2025 is the easiest way to do this. I started and scaled my own cleaning business from 0 to 40K a month in just under 9 months. And I've helped dozens of other students start and scale their own cleaning businesses from 0 to 10K in as little as just 23 days in some cases, using an extremely simple system. This has allowed me to build a lifestyle that I love and become financially free. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can do the same. When getting into a remote cleaning business, I think one of the critical things you need to keep in mind is what is the mindset that will produce the results that you're looking for. So when you get started in a remote cleaning business, I think the reality is a lot of people get the foundation wrong. And what I mean by that is they bring the wrong mindset to the actual startup. And what I mean is when you get started in something like this, I think oftentimes you will start to feel like you have to do everything inside the company, right? You've got the sales, you got the support, you got the hiring, you've got the management, you've got the ads. Everything there seems like there's a lot to do. It's very overwhelming and you can get lost in all the day-to-day. And what really unlocked the difference for me in terms of how do I go from 0 to 40K and beyond is having a different mindset that I am building a set of systems that this business will run on. Very much like, if you took the example like McDonald's, there are the people who actually flip the burgers and then there's the people who build the franchise. And the franchise is really just a set of systems that people will do over and over and over again, and they do that nationwide. It's really that same philosophy of elevating yourself to more of the CEO level operator as opposed to the guy that's in the trenches actually doing everything. And the beauty about this model is really you are not going to be ever cleaning anything ever. That's not the point. The point is to develop the set of systems that allow you to run a company, not the skills to actually clean a person's home. And what I've noticed is that I often have people come to me and they're looking for help and they're wondering, why am I not growing in this business? Why am I stuck at, X level? And oftentimes after we kind of peel back the curtain, it really just shows that they're spending the time in the wrong places. And what I mean by that is they're still doing too much. And ultimately, it's an exercise of getting them to realize they need to become this person, have this mindset, value their time, so they're using that time more on the business as opposed to in the business. And this mindset, in my opinion, really separates those who get stuck in their business and those who are able to scale their businesses. As you think about going and starting one of these companies, that mindset of how am I coming into this? What's the approach? How am I framing everything that I do on a day-to-day needs to come from that mindset. That's probably the most important thing in terms of what I would recommend if you're going to get started with something like this. In addition to that, I think also having a robust market research process allows you to enter the venture with confidence. And what I mean by that is you never want to get into a situation where it's the blind leading the blind. You don't know what you're doing and then you don't know how to fix it. So whenever you get into a market and whenever you're going to start a market, you want to have a set criteria of what you're actually looking for so you can grow, scale profitably. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to run into challenges. You're going to make it harder than it has to be. And ultimately, it's going to produce short-term and long-term pains and lack of growth. So my process and my blueprint of how I like to look at markets, I would typically like to do two things. I want to understand the qualitative and quantitative analysis of the market and the competitors in the market. So whenever I go into a market, what I'm trying to identify are, do the numbers make sense, right? So the numbers meaning how much am I going to get paid? How much are my cleaners going to get paid? And ultimately, how much money am I going to take home? Those numbers need to make sense, right? Because let's just put it this way. If you have more profits to work with, that means you have more room for error. Conversely, if you have less profits, that means you have less room for error. So the common thought would be, hey, let's go towards more profits. And that gets done through a market research exercise and understanding how to calculate those numbers. In addition to the quantitative, there's also the qualitative. So that's understanding what are the specific attributes that each company provides from a customer service standpoint, a responsiveness standpoint, just their overall demeanor, how they run their business, how they communicate with their customers, how they follow up with their customers, right? All of those things need to be taken into consideration so you have an understanding of the dynamic landscape of any given market. Once you're able to identify both like the quantitative and qualitative and put that together, that's where you start to have an actual clear picture of what you're getting yourself into. It's a comprehensive analysis, so there's not a question mark on what you're trying to do. You know the numbers, you know the competition, you know where your competitive edge is, and you know the strategy you're about to roll out will be able to execute on what you found through the market research. That's what actually creates confidence. It's not a feeling. This is based on the numbers. This is based on the work. That way you can go in and you actually have confidence when you're starting. Oftentimes what I find is no one's done that part. You don't do the research. You haven't identified an edge. You don't actually know whether or not this makes sense for you. You just go out there and do it blindly. And then they wonder, why do I have issues? Why do I have legacy issues? Why does my business feel like I can't grow? There's been no pre-work to actually have the strategy work. And I would say this is probably one of the bigger mistakes operators will make, and something you can easily prevent in a short period of time by just doing your homework, doing your due diligence, and having a clear framework for doing it. Another foundational mistake I see a lot of people make is that they don't know how to allocate their resources properly when they're starting their company. They're spending a lot of time, energy, and resources, particularly the resources, in the wrong places. That ultimately is going to lead to slowdowns, not having enough money to reinvest in the business, and not using it efficiently so you can scale profitably. And having proper funding really will change many different things. It's mostly to do with how you're making decisions, because if you don't have proper funding, you will start to make short-term decisions for bad long-term results. And underfunded operators will do this time and time again, and that typically leads to you not performing well over a long period of time. So using the right resources at the right cost will allow you to have a financial cushion so you can start to have profits, reinvest in the business, and scale that way. I was able to grow my company for a very, very small amount of money because I understood this concept. And if you plan on starting with a low budget, then this becomes extremely important because you will have stress on your business if you don't have the right capital strategy in place. By the way, if you want to skip the entire process of trying to figure this out on your own and start your own remote cleaning business, click the first link in the description below to work with me one-on-one to scale your own cleaning business from 0 to 10K in the next 120 days. I provide unlimited access and support because I only work with a small group of people at a time. After having a foundation that's strong, and let's assume you knew those things that I just talked about, the second most important thing in starting your own remote cleaning business is really understanding, do I have a customer acquisition system that actually works predictably? So it's one thing to just randomly toss things in the air and see what works and try things and trial and error. You oftentimes may not survive that period of time. And it's another thing to have an actual roadmap and system for breaking down how you're going to get each customer and how you're going to do it month over month, week over week, day over day. Now, you don't need a ton of sales at 10K with this model in the next 120 days. If you ran the numbers, really at the end of the day, it's probably going to be around 50 cleanings for a month, which is less than even 2 a day. And the idea is that you don't need a ton of customers. The real thing you're trying to achieve is I want quality customers that are willing to pay for a premium service that can stay with me for a long period of time. If you're able to attract those people, that's going to lead to long-term success no matter what. So you need to understand, if I'm looking for this type of person, do I have a strategy that's actually going to attract that type of customer? Because the right audience is going to eliminate you from all those sales objections like price and B, because you've done the pre-work upfront. And then once you understand that, it's all about how do you actually execute the strategy. So do you have digital marketing strategies? Do you have organic marketing strategies that attract that customer that we mentioned? And doing that over again so it happens consistently over time. And that's what I personally do. I leverage certain digital platforms that will attract that type of customer and frame that and set it up in a way that it does that. And then we also are targeting those people from an organic outreach side as well, so we can get those specific types of customers into our business. So that covers really the more of the marketing side. So how do I actually get the right customer to even see my company? Then is the conversion process. And if you don't have a specific sales process, this is where everything breaks down right at the last hurdle. And you obviously don't want that as a business, because sales drives revenue, drives profit, drives the entire business forward. So I've been able to design a sales approach that converts without a ton of reviews. And that's because I positioned myself as more of a premium option, regardless if I had all the experience of the world, regardless if I had all the testimonials in the world. And that comes by understanding that customers and their psychology trumps all of those things we just talked about in terms of reviews and experience. And positioning yourself that way will allow you to win more business over the other customers that they talk about. And that really comes down to having a really, really good sales script that understands the psychology, that understands their pain points, that understands how to design a service that accommodates all of those things, something that no other company in their area is going to do. That's exactly how a lot of my students do it. For instance, Mike, who was able to grow his company to 10K in just 23 days, he implemented this strategy. He obviously didn't have a ton of experience. He had never had a cleaning company before. He's never ran a cleaning business before, but how was he able to do that much growth in that short a period of time? He had that process down. He was able to pitch basically $10,000 worth of business in under a month with no experience. So you have to have, if you're going to do something like that, you're going to have to overcome that. That can't be a problem. So you're going to need to have a robust sales process, a script, and the way that you conduct yourself throughout that experience to be able to execute at that level. And that's really the key to having a client acquisition system that's predictable and scalable. You have to have both of those things working properly. You have to have both of them sequenced properly so you can maximize the right type of customer and generate the most amount of revenue from those customers. After building a predictable client acquisition system, then really all that's left is understanding how to do this repeatably at scale. And building that system, it feels like, hey, I've got passive income coming or light active management of my company. And that really comes in the form of delegation. And what I mean by delegation is leveraging labor, aka people, that can come in and start to execute the system that you built. So if you think about what we just talked about, we built a foundation, and that has led to a client acquisition system that we're able to grow predictably. And now we're putting people in place to execute the system that we built. The way that I like to look at it is there are always going to be people who might not be able to do something as well as you, but the more people that are able to do 80% of the work you're able to do, that's going to trump as you start to add more people into your business. So having a robust, proper hiring and onboarding and training and management protocol in place will allow you to have a self-managing team over time that grows your company. And for me, that was everything. I needed to find a business that did that thing eventually. I knew that I would put in the work initially, like anyone should, but over time, I wanted a business that could run on its own, wasn't going to be a headache, people knew what they were doing, and ultimately, I wanted two things. I wanted a business that could grow while saving me time. Because usually you run into businesses, it's one or the other, and you have to sacrifice that. And ultimately, I felt like that's how you're going to lose your freedom. And I was always in it for how can I build a business that could enable me to have the freedom and still be financially free. And having these systems, they give you your nights off. They give you your weekends free. You don't have to be, stuck in your business feeling like you have to be working every single moment. And that all changed when I started that delegation process after I built the technology and systems in place. And I think another thing that is probably not talked about enough is what do you do with the profits initially as you're growing? And for me, what I was able to do, I was fortunate enough, I was able to reinvest all of my profits back into the business, which helped accelerate the growth even further. I never brought in extra capital after I started. So my starting amount, I've never put $1 in to this date. So we've been basically self-funded from day zero. And ultimately, reinvesting your profits back into the business will allow you to scale much quicker to a much bigger size. And that difference between spending money and investing money in your business ultimately, I think, changes the outcome of where you're able to go. Because some people are in it for just getting the lifestyle and some people want the freedom. And I think if you're thinking in terms of how can I do the latter, you're going to make decisions that are going to ultimately enable it and have some short-term sacrifice, but ultimately get what you want long-term. And I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not a long time. We're talking about just a few months to be able to get this thing to a place where you can have it growing, you can have the team built out, and it is, for the most part, running on its own. And the reality is I've laid out the framework here, but there are dozens of little details, nuances, system build outs that really make the difference between success and failure. If you want to work with me directly to build your remote cleaning business from 0 to 10K in 120 days, click the link in the description below. Again, I only take on a handful of students because I provide unlimited one-on-one support, something no one else in the space offers. So if you want chat support, if you want call support in an unlimited fashion, that's the kind of support that you will receive. And by the way, this is my first ever YouTube video, so if you like the video, I'm going to be dropping a lot more like this. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.